we've got a couple of things going that are accessible for you as a team leader. One, I spoke of the insurance roster. As part of your shares of ministry, the conference offers accident and injury insurance. It's a supplemental insurance, but it is available at no extra cost. All you have to do is fill out the form and send it in. The second thing, if you're doing something out of the country that I highly, highly recommend, maybe even highly, highly, highly recommend, is going to the Northeast Jurisdiction website and getting their insurance. Because their insurance includes illness. And one of the things that I found more times than not, if I'm out of the country, it's illness that hits the team. Now, I'll be honest, it's a slow process to get reimbursed, but it does work. Unfortunately, I had to file a claim on a team member that we took to Kenya. But I'm telling you, team leaders, if you're out of this country and you have a medical emergency, this gives you peace of mind. If you hear a knock on your door at 4 a.m. and you know that it's not anything good, and that's what happened to me in Kenya. And I found out that one of my team members hadn't urinated in about 18 hours and could hardly stand up. I won't go into all the other details of getting a ride to the hospital, but we had to take him to the hospital. And he ended up getting catheterized and some other stuff. He was having some severe kidney issues, obviously. But I was preparing to have to medevac him back to the States. Having this in place, this covers medical evacuation, and heaven forbid, it covers bringing bodies back if someone should happen to die. And it has happened, thankfully, not to me. But there have been instances where people have maybe a cardiac issue, who knows what. Western Pennsylvania director, her father, I think it was about 3 years ago, died in Belize while snorkeling. And she tells the story of the nightmare to get the body back and the cost. And from my understanding, it is astronomically expensive. These things are covered. The thing that gave me peace of mind was that when I had this team member, we were 2 hours out of Nairobi. We were in the middle of a very small town, very rural area. I contacted them, told them the story. They have staff on duty 24 hours a day and to review medical cases. If the doctors recommended him coming home, they were going to be able to review that right away, and they were going to send transportation to us. Which, again, when you're out of your comfort zone and you don't know how to get somebody out, I thought we'd at least have to get them to the airport, and they were going to send it right to the hotel to pick them up.
So you don't even pay for that, the evacuation up front, they just cover that?
They would arrange all of that, which I knew that they covered it until that time, it was the only time I ever had to call them. I found out that they would actually arrange it for us. So, something we all pray that we never have to use, but it's nice to know it's there. The difference in systems, went to the ER doctor was $10. We got medicine, test, ultrasound, and the total bill came to $210. Took me 6 months, but they picked up the tab and paid it. So don't leave your team open. We talked about the safe sanctuaries. Be very aware. We need to, not just to protect our youth or the people we're working with, but to protect yourself against accusation. It just isn't worth taking the chance. We talked about that. Another thing that I often do with my teams at orientation is I'll talk about a pack out. Does anybody else do pack outs? What's a pack out? That's usually where we gather any materials, and we just, again, it's a kind of, we get together, we'll do a devotion, and we'll start packing them in suitcases, weighing them, seeing who's going to be responsible. Along those lines, I think it's another great time to get the team together, carry that letter if you're taking things. Again, on top of their suitcase, on top of the materials, in case somebody from customs opens it behind the doors, they can see what it's for, as well as carrying the copy with you. And specifically stating that they are not for resale. That's usually the stumbling block. We have used suitcases, we've used Tupperware Rubbermaid action packers are about the right size. Just one of the things that, you probably all know this, but when you secure things like that, use zip ties so that they can get in them easily if they need to inspect them. But it also gives you a little bit of security that things don't fly open. I don't notarize the list. Another thing, again, that you could be faced with as a team leader is conflict. I mean, it's been enlightening over the years. I haven't had to do much of this, but I really do recommend following this, that whenever I've had an issue, I've gone immediately, as is tasteful. I mean, I don't want to initially call people out in front of others, but go to them as soon as I'm aware there is a problem. The longer you ignore it, the more likely it is to grow, and also not only does it may affect their ministry or your ministry, it can also have a big impact on your team attitude. I've seen this happen where the anger within the team grows when somebody's breaking the rules, and it can just poison the whole thing. So I go to them in person. I will then do it take another person, especially if it's right, someone from my ministry partner who may be able to better explain to them why what they're doing could be harmful to the ministry. And next to last, I'll take it before the team. The team will call them out. Having your team well trained helps you in a lot of ways, including some of this. I've had more problems dealt with by the team before it ever got to me than I've had to deal with personally. And lastly, again, team leader, you got to be willing to make the decision. If they're doing damage to your ministry or they're not following the rules, send them home. I've never had to do it, but I would. One person can do so much damage to a team or a ministry. It isn't worth it. And it can sour everything, and you can turn the whole team off to ever being in mission again. So we have to lead with strength at times. I'm a big believer in the evaluations. Again, those forms are on the webpage as well as on the disc. Even after all these years, I still use evaluations every team. There's things over the years that I've seen where I thought were maybe bugged me for the week, that this didn't go the way I thought it should or I wanted it to. And I find out that somehow it was a blessing to somebody on our team. Or the things that I thought were great didn't sit well with somebody else. It just helps me continue to see from other people's perspectives and learn about what I can do better. I'm a big believer, and again, I don't give that to them when we get home and say, send that back to me. That's usually my last night. I usually have a wrap with the folks where we talk about the week, what's happened, how's God moved, where have we seen God. And I don't let them leave the room until they fill out their evaluation and give it back to me. So I just don't like to collect forms. What can I say? But I like the information, and I think as a leader, it's always good to be evaluating what we're doing. I said you'd like to take them prisoners. Sometimes. I better not follow up on any more on that. And also at that time, as we're wrapping up, although usually if I'm going to do this, it's easier to do at a local church level is to plan something, a wrap after you get back, like a week, 2 weeks after you get back, to share where people are at, how they're processing their experience. And now, not as much now as in the old days, we used to share photos and so on, but now with Facebook and Google Drives and so on, it's pretty easy to share that stuff that way. I also take the time on that last night to talk with them a little bit about what they may be feeling emotionally after they come back. For those of you who've been out on one of these experiences, it's just a whole range, and it's really natural when you come back to the American way of living. Even if you were, or our way of living here, and you've come from some place that maybe was very poor, or the nature was different, whatever, you usually come back and you're really happy to be home. You want to tell people, but then it can be depressing. It can almost be sad because you realize how much more you have. And it kind of starts a process in your head of why, or can at least, of why do I have this? Why have I been blessed in these ways when I've met real humans that, through no fault of their own, are struggling just to meet the daily needs. So just walking them through that, giving them a heads up, encouraging them to communicate with each other about what they're feeling. Again, that's one side of the communication being easy that I like, is with social media, with cell phones, text messages, we can follow up on this experience and support each other and have them support each other. So that's my last night. Then again is share the story. And I think this is even more important when you're starting come back to your church. They need to know that you made a difference, or they made a difference by supporting you. And I shared with you my views on the PowerPoints and videos. I encourage that. And if you're going to have somebody give a testimony, encourage them to write it down. This has gotten away from me more than once. And so I just give you the caution. Coach, not in their story, but in the way we present it, so that we don't have the church zoning out on us, but we're letting them know they made a difference by supporting us, and they can make a difference by going with us the next time. Share it. I encourage you to share on our conference social media what's happening, and
Send it to me directly if you want. And also, I don't know if I'd be able to do it for everybody who would come back, but I just thought what I could do is help you guys put together a short little video. If you want to tell your story in a video form, we can sit down and do an interview. You can even write the questions and have all the answers prepared. We'll just tape it and I'll edit it together in a real quick little thing, and then that's what you can share, or you can put on the Facebook page. If you want to write something and add, throw
Do you have a business card?
I'm sorry, I don't think I didn't even, we started and I didn't even introduce. This is Sean Gilgore. He's our Director of Communications for the conference.
I took over for Jerry. Well, Jerry. I'm introducing myself here as the new Jerry.
The new Jerry. That's cute. Thanks, John.
Hopefully, as we have spent some time with this ministry partner, hopefully we come out of it with a relationship that wants to be continued. And so I encourage you as a team leader to talk with your church, talk with your team of how do we continue this? Do we continue this? I mean, certainly, just like we get evaluated, I'd expect you to evaluate your experience with them, the way they're operating, the way their rules are, fit into what you envision your ministry. But there are opportunities to continue and expand. Sharing this with the conference also gives an encouragement for other people to try that area, to be exposed. There's so many great ministries out there that we can work with. that I always coveted the chance to hear about one that I didn't know about. So it is, I use the Costa Rica mission as an example. I went there thanks to the grace and the welcome of another team. We came, I started a team. I've now been blessed to mentor 3, 4 team leaders who are going down there and working with their ministry. That's how it grows, and or one of the ways it grows. So tell your story. We certainly, this is something that came out of GBGM, General Board of Global Missions. Sorry. And they also talk about covenant relationships and financial giving. And it may lead you there. I don't know. Okay. One of the big things that I've hit on a couple times, we're going to spend a little more time here this afternoon before we wrap up, is our attitude as we experience things different than what we know at home. Whether it's things like gender roles in a different society that may rub very much against what we live here in the States, or maybe it's even within the States. I mean, I look at, we had an experience back in the backwoods down south. We went into the house and there's a 14-year-old and he was celebrating, Mom and Dad were there, he was celebrating with a 40-ounce beer. Wasn't a big deal to him. That kind of stuff comes up. And as we go outside of our area, we need to be sensitive. And we need to help our teams. We talked about that. Sweat, look at that. Awesome animations when they work. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. There's one to work on. And I think it's part, I've realized, and I hope you all realize as team members, as team leaders, we don't get it all. We're not going to get it all right every time. We're not going to get most, hopefully we get a chunk of it, but it's a process. And as you go out into mission, your process is going to be continually reforming as you experience new things, new people. And sometimes we really have to help our teams do that. My wife jokes with me of my transforming leadership styles over the years. We had, in Kenya, I had a wonderful team member who's an educator, and we were at the school, and she said, we need to get this book, and this book here for them right away. That's what we have to do. That's the next thing. And I sat back, and I said, and I worked her through, how would we do this? How do we know they need this? As opposed to in the old days when I would have said, no, we don't need to do that. We're team leaders, we're going to develop new ways of doing that, but we need to help people think things out, and sometimes we need help. And that's where I keep going back, our relationship with our ministry partner, whoever that is. We need to develop a relationship where they can be honest with us and say, you're not getting it. That's not the way we do it. Instead of creating a system or a relationship where they feel obligated to agree with us. So many places we go can feel held hostage by our dollars. They feel that they can feel that their ministry is being directed because we're bringing money. And we need to be sensitive enough to let them teach us. So a couple of things that I throw out, well, we'll get down the road here. How do we do this on a team? Any ideas? Pray, right?
Pray together.
Praying together.
Devotionals on the
Okay. I've never used this. Has anybody ever been on a team where they had a spiritual guide for the week?
Sort of did it, did he?
Did you?
There was a book they had where there were devotions in it, and each day we started with that, and we discussed it, and then in the evening we got together again. I guess that's,
Okay.
When we do our devotions, we get to present our devotion. So we're assigned days, either in the morning or in the evening, and we share something spiritual. We also have a travel team scripture that not only we're praying into, the whole congregation is praying into.
Cool.
Psalms 91. And so that kind of guides us through our whole trip. We don't go to bed at night without reading Psalms 91. It just sets the foundation. So we kind of have that scripted. But I think that what I like about the way we do it is it allows for, let's say, and Patty has something that spiritually moved her. It allows her to share that with us, and we could celebrate that together with her, as opposed to it just being all about what Drew feels as though we should be doing for the whole 10 days. You know, but it allows for us to all.
Oh my God, that came out.
it's not
Yeah.
all about you, Drew.
It just, but not, maybe I shouldn't have said Drew, but the team leader. The team leader. So it allows us to feel inclusive.
Okay.
So I like that. The team leader, not Drew. Is that recorded?
Can you edit that? It's still Drew.
I love this guy.
I think also it never ceases to amaze me when we get together and a team gets together and creates a safe space. The testimonies that come out. And my challenge that I am constantly these days looking for is how do I create or foster that safe space? Sometimes I've just been blown away. I was 2 nights into a team in West Virginia, and a lady said, "Can I speak to the group tonight?" I said, "Sure." And she shared about the night she went to commit suicide and how her faith is working her through. And I'm just sitting there going, thank you. And that ministered to that whole group in a different way that, again, as we started with that video talking about mission is so vast in what it does. The ministry that happens between team members as well as the communities we go to. It almost sounds corny to me sometimes, but that whole thing, where did you see God today? The things that opens up blows my mind. And I see the people, and it continually opens my eyes to look at things differently. So just some things that if you aren't doing, maybe you want to. I don't know. I've tended to take our devotional times and make them more than just reading a devotion. I try to make it more of a short worship time. And there again is another opportunity as you get to know people and you form your team, finding out things like musical instruments and skills. We had a guy came with like one of these backpack travel guitars one time. It was awesome. Some other resources, if you haven't seen this, it's pass it around. It was put out a few years ago as kind of an add-on to your manual. But this has some ideas of meditations, study that you can choose to use. It's not exactly a light read, but it is available at, easy now. It's afternoon, we're losing them.
You lost me at it. It's not a light read. We all dropped out.
I was on my way to the store to get it.
Yeah, I blew it. Well,
Vinny said that.
no commission for me. That is available on Amazon. Transforming Ventures is another one that you can use.
I bet that's an easy read, huh?
That one's later. Of course, you have your upper rooms. The other thing that, again, we go ahead.
What's your, I think we thought we were gonna get to it, but we might have passed it now, so maybe we're not
Go
getting
ahead.
to it. But post-mission team debriefing sessions.
Okay.
Are you still coming to that, or?
No.
Okay.
But we could talk about it. That can take a lot of forms, depending on what you want to accomplish. A lot of times for me, when I've done them in the past, it was because I was trying to continue the mission work. Now, like the last 5 years, it's kind of been, I've taken teams to a spot, learned how to do that, encouraged somebody else to go, so I'm not going back. When I would have the wrap-ups, it was sort of a continuation of my evaluation. I wanted to hear. I also wanted to make sure everybody was doing well, that there weren't unresolved issues or concerns. And then I was also use it to start to recruit for the next year and start to plant that seed. Or, in this role, oftentimes I'm trying to identify who God might be laying on that group to lead their own team. So I've always felt like I wanted to lead, but I also wanted to encourage others and grow it. So I often pray over my teams and would use things like times like that to say, what do you think about maybe you taking one next year? I want a week. I'd like to go as a member. But
Do you have a number of meetings in your head, or mostly just one follow-up?
I've typically done one because then I'm cycling back into gearing up for the next season, and so then I'm looking to recruit a new team.
Wonder if we have a group chat, so that helps too. You know, if something arises, we're sending out in a group chat of the whole team that went, and so we know where people are going.
Does anyone else have this rash?
I mean, everything. We are a little bit transparent.
It's an important question though, right?
We cover
What other questions have you guys used in like your devotions and stuff to start discussion? I'm always anxious to hear what other people use.
What brought you joy and what broke your heart today?
Okay.
So we used to do the highs and lows. Yeah. What brought you here?
Okay. Okay.
that one, and that was pretty awesome.
What did you learn?
What did you learn? Good.
How did you serve? How were you served?
I like that. I like that. Did anyone cry today?
Good, we cry every day. Holy
Is it-
Spirit, if you ain't crying, something wrong. We cry every day.
But as a team leader, I don't know about you, but I'm just sitting there going, yeah, God's talking, and somebody's listening. Mary, Jill. We were in Kenya like 4 hours. She later told me. I was sitting she said, I was just sitting in the van. I was weeping. God was talking to me. And I'm just like, praise God. He's using us to get in touch.
You should have seen Andrea for about a month after they got back.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. There were several, and even her husband were really concerned about her. And I think she should have had some debriefing last year more,
Okay.
because she was like, just out of it.
Can be a mess. That kind of ride. So I'm always hesitate. I'm always hesitate to unless somebody shares with me that they cried, because I don't want to embarrass somebody. But there is that part of me. As long as I know they're not ill or hurting, there's that part of me. It's like, yes. What did you see today? Different from home.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the advantages of going with the group at your church too, is that it's easier check-in, do
Right.
check-ins, 3 weeks went past and you ain't been to church on Sunday, let's make a visit. So it kind of helps that way, but if it's, other people, you'd have to make extra efforts to reach out and see how well they're doing.
And with our group last year, it turned out 1/3 of us had already lost a child in our life. We didn't know that about all the people in our group though, even though they were all from our church.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, you find things out and
Good
become
bonding time.
community and just such a tight group.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This was one of my favorites, and one of the most surprising answers I used on our boys. They were 14 when we took them to Costa Rica, and we came back, and I was taunting them that I was taking them to Taco Bell for more beans and rice, and they were like, "No!" And I said, "What did hit you that was different?" And I expected the kids played soccer with a soda bottle or this or that. And they said, "Why doesn't our church feel like that?" And I was like, yeah, God's work. I never know what I'm going to get, but He does. We talked about that. Okay. If I can say it, ethnocentrism. Do we deal with that?
Yeah.
How do you see it on a team?
Oh, when they take off and go and do their own thing and they're not supposed to.
When they begin to act like they need us to be here, and that we're,
We're the savior?
something like that, yeah.
The poor people, we're here to take care of the poor, indigent, medically ill, what have you people. We're part of the same.
It's very real, and sometimes we see it really clearly, sometimes not so clearly.
I think when I got sick, that was God's way of kind of fighting that in me. That like I'd gone down there and I'm like, oh, I'm coming down here to help. That I'm down here to serve them for a week. I get sick, end up in quarantine in the hospital, and everyone that had to get me there and all that, they had to serve me. And suddenly I'm not helping them. They're just trying to keep me alive.
Right.
Um,
It's quite a role reversal, isn't it?
right.
I get, and I've seen it over and over. This is supposed to be a funny, but I think it hits a little true. I don't want to inconvenience, but if it's not too much trouble, bring me ice cubes for my Coke and bring them on the double. And get a Big Mac with fries instead of those Odysseus dishes. I don't know how I could quite digest them. You know there are heads on those fishes. Those withered potatoes are tasteless. The spices are truly alarming to my delicate digestion. I've used up my last roll of Charmin. Always take enough Charmin. I'm a wet wipe kind of guy. I don't leave home without the diaper wipes. There's so many different things. But I think some of these things, if we can point them out to our teams, they aren't necessarily said in a mean, or meant to be mean or demeaning, but we don't realize how it can come across. And so I often spend some time in my orientation just to bring up some funny things like this, but it lets people think about how you can be received. The worst I ever had, boy, it sounds like I'm picking on pastors today, was a pastor. Yeah, well, after the 15th, I guess it doesn't matter. We took a group to the Bahamas, and we had grits and tuna for breakfast. It was a new combination to me, I admit, but it actually was pretty good. But he says in the room adjacent to where they're cooking, I don't like cat food. Those ladies who were cooking heard it, and I saw their faces. And I know in his heart, he was joking around. He did not want to hurt anyone's feelings. But spending the time, that's the other thing that I get scared of with humor across cultures. Of what can I say that to us would be innocent and humorous might be offensive, or taking in a different context that I don't even understand.
We also talked about that some of the times that we were getting the food, that was more or fancier food than most of them had even, that they would see in a normal week and stuff, and that like, they're literally giving us everything, and even if we paid for it, it's still like, they saw it bring in, and all the food that they brought in for just us for a week, you know, might have been what the village would have seen for, the whole village would have seen for a week or something.
Right.
And so we kind of went with the policy that you pretty much eat what you're served, unless you can, you know, if you have an allergy, a legitimate reason not to. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, respect, and that again is team leaders building the expectation before we go of how we'll react to things. Who do you see? What do you see?
Ugly woman with nose, and then a very petite lady with a feather in her, dark hair.
You see it? Everybody? No? The older lady, her nose. Yeah. Now I lost it, and I've done this. Or the lady looking over her shoulder, and that's like her nose and an eyelash, and the hair, and that's her cheek. This could be a stumbling block, I think.
The ear is an eye, or the eye is an ear, depending on how you look at it. It's the old woman, right? And the woman's nose, the young woman's chin, looking off in that direction.
Perspective matters, doesn't it? It matters, and both of them are real. They're both real pictures. But how are we looking at it? I had something recently. When we go out and mission, should we practice the golden rule? Now everybody's like, this is a trick question, isn't it?
None of it's not their way.
What is the golden rule?
Do it you would almost,
Right.
you almost practice it at a higher level though, of that as you would want them to be sensitive to your culture if they were here, you need to be sensitive to their culture if they're there.
Yeah. How about the platinum rule? I lifted this from somebody else. Exactly what you're saying. Treat others as they want to be treated. I mean, I grew up saying golden rule. That's golden. That's the way that's a shift. That's a shift. And it's not easy all the time. When your life experiences have taught you one thing or one way of doing it that always worked, it can be tough. Sometimes we get this sense of we go to different places, and because what they do is different, or the way they feel it's different, this whole ethno, thank you. Somehow we feel like we've got it, and they don't. And we're better. They're worse. And even amongst us Christians and people with love in our hearts, when we go in to help, we want to go help. It's still hard sometimes to not see things that way. Because we're comfortable with what we know. And our team is going to be comfortable with what they know and the way they've done it. And we go in for a snapshot a lot of times. So we see it in the moment, but we don't realize, and our teams don't realize what years and years of experience in that community have brought this way of doing things, or this attitude, or this belief. It's something we got to continue to fight, right here in the United States as well as across the world, no doubt. And some of our folks, we also, I heard someone I think ask, one of the questions they like to do is, why are you going? And again, this is a little fun, but something that sometimes we point out, mindsets that our VIMers may be coming with that maybe we don't want them to come with. You know, you ask them a question like, where should we go next? And, you know, VIMers stand for vacationers impersonating missionaries. You know, they want to choose the site based on, solely on, hey, I'd like to see the Taj Mahal. Well, it is pretty neat. But that mindset of things other than mission. It's all about me, the very important me, that VIMer. They will challenge you. They will challenge you when they come forward with special needs. Be ready. Be gentle.
Have you ever discouraged people from coming on your team?
I have had one that they went with me,
Oh, did they?
and I won't take them again. And thankfully, they never ask again.
Good.
I'll be honest, my wife asked me, what are you going to do if this person comes? And I said, I have to say, I don't think this is the right fit. She was the one, not the one that ran off, but she was the one that was giving gifts behind the back. She was giving people money, and we asked her not to do that, and then we found her giving shoes to one family but not another, and it was creating a whole ugly scene. And she just wasn't at a place in her life that she could buy into the program. That's okay. But that was the only person I've ever had where I had team members come and tell me, if that person goes, I will not go anymore. Somewhere down the road, it might fit. It might work for her, but it wasn't a good fit right now. You know, the very important managers, VIMs. You know, again, if you are a strong leader, you probably have less of this, but beware. There are, from time to time, those who want to do it their way and only their way. We've got what you need, and we need nothing. Excuse me, one of the things you'll hear more and more, and we're not going to spend really time on it today though, but mutuality in mission. If you want some light reading, so now I have to say that, and then you'll be out and get it. Things like helping without hurting, and some of those, where we talk about this, they explore more of the partnership, but the respect of what each side brings to the table is important to a long-term two-way relationship. We'll just give more money. The very volunteers inundated with money. The bottom line is so often where we go, again, whether it's inner city or backwoods or around the world, our very ability to go and serve speaks that we have money. And how do our actions get away from that? Or do they stay with, I'm bringing the money to your ministry. We're bringing the money. You will do what we want. you probably all are aware of some of the big questions coming to the United Methodist Church. They're already here, but coming in February. Some of my friends in Africa that I've worked with are terrified that if their view isn't the same as what the Americans' view is, their ministries won't be supported anymore. They feel held hostage to the money. And so it's, again, something for us to watch in our team as well as ourselves. We can fix it, vigorously improving most everything. Uh-oh, the boss is here. Now I have to talk nice. Any ladies have lady mission questions, there's who to talk to. I did share about your India toilet concerns, so they can't use that against me. Okay. The independence, again, I'm always looking to encourage new leaders for the future, but we need to encourage our folks, again, to follow the program and not be out making promises. It's another thing that I always want you to stress to your team. Don't make promises even if you think you can keep them, because that can ruin relationships and it can ruin ministries that are present. If I'm there as a servant of our friends in Costa Rica and I promise that I'm going to send money for XYZ to go and I don't do it, it doesn't just damage my reputation, it damages that ministry. They're not like us. No. And yes, there are differences. There are similarities. But what do? As a team leader, I think it's a great, great chance for us to bring some of these things out. You know, our evening wrap-ups, our morning devotions. And again, not coming at it like I've got all the answers as a team leader, but maybe guiding those discussions, we can help find answers together. And maybe there aren't answers. Maybe there's just acceptance of difference and embracing the likenesses. I don't know. When we start to see that it's different, instead of civilized and primitive, we start to get to a better place for ministry. Like I said, looking for those common things. That's one of the great things we have in the church. If we are in ministry partners, we've got some place to start. A faith in Jesus Christ. And a faith in that Savior. And if we can hold that as the primary thing, we can work around a lot of other things. But sometimes and our team members will get so caught up in what's different, or why don't they do it that way, that we forget that we're all on the same page in our faith. Okay, getting towards the end. What's culture? What's culture based on? Or what can it be based on?
Beliefs, attitudes, history, people, essentially, the things that they were taught, the things that they implicitly and explicitly,
Value.
Social norms for the
When we go into a new setting, how much of the culture do you think we get in 7 days or 14 days? I see smiles, but no answers.
you get surface culture. You're being scratched the surface. You're seeing the symptoms, I guess would be one way to say it if you were to put it in terms, but you're not seeing the underlying causes that led to the development of those practices and so on and so forth.
Okay. I've heard some really interesting comparisons of culture to an iceberg. And I think it's rings true to me that so much is below the surface. And so even, I don't care how many times I've been to Costa Rica, I don't understand. I understand parts. I've got glimpses. I'm starting to get a little bit below the surface, but I'll never get the whole picture. And we're not going to, as we're not coming from where they're coming from. I haven't lived in an urban setting all of my life. I can understand bits and pieces, but I'm not going to get it. Somebody who hasn't lived out in the woods with bears walking through their yard and deer walking through their yard, they aren't going to get it. My whole picture. And it's hard sometimes. I don't like their comparison. I'm going through it. I mean, we get to see face to face, but even when we're face to face, how much of it goes undiscovered? Part of our challenge as team leaders is to get below the surface in loving, kind ways. Developing relationships that explore culture, hopefully, I don't know if you can you ever really get judgment free? Can we? I sometimes can, I mean, I'd love to say that I could, but I judge things. But go ahead.
Judgment or classification? Because I think judgment implies that you begin to put values on things and one value over another. I think you can probably get to a place where you can stop saying one is better, but you can still classify and say that this is different or something, I don't know.
What are your thoughts?
I think that we take our own culture with us. I know for me going to India, my belief in equality of all individuals, and in particular in India, women, and the treatment of women. And yes, I probably did judge. I have learned over the years to not let that get in the way, right? And I think there is a way to do that. I think you can do that. I don't think it's right the way that women are treated in India. I'll never believe it's right because I have basic beliefs about how people should be treated. But on the other hand, I also know that to develop a relationship, that has to go to another place. And my heart of love is what I need to put out there, not my mind of judgment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of these, it is. I think you're right on. There's certain things that we're going to experience that we're not going to buy into. But we have to find a way for ourselves and for our team to help them maybe sit aside, maybe ignore, for the sake of the looking at where we're the same. But also then appreciating. I think your India example is just right on. When we as we start to understand some of those things, we also start to get special blessings. Maybe was I sharing it with you? I don't know who I shared with the day that I spent sitting with the 3 Indian ladies in their house. And they were just the neatest ladies. They had been serving as nurses in church hospitals in India their entire life. And the one rode along with us with me to the airport. And when I went to leave, she didn't get around well. She had me come to the back door of the car. And she just reached up and patted my cheek. And as I got just a little bit of education that week on the Indian culture, that was so significant to me. I'll carry that forever. That was a bold thing. And if we can help our teams understand culture a little bit more, some more of those things are going to bless their experience. You know, gestures, greetings, these are things that are real straightforward that we can do. Well, sometimes they're straightforward. If you don't know, they're not straightforward. The Kenya thing, I went like this and waved at the kids, and that was, they all looked at me, and the DS said, "Why are you calling them to the car?" I said, "Huh?" He said, "That means come here." this means goodbye. So it isn't always straightforward, but these are some of the things that you as a team leader can research and prep your team that helps open the door to the deeper culture. If we can show, if our hosts see that we're trying to do some basic things like they do that, or in manner, it earns points. Don't we appreciate it when someone tries to accommodate us or do something the way we do? It's the same thing. So spend the time and you will be rewarded. And along with, I hope he's on your team and not mine. These are the kinds of things you can research. There's a lot of good places on the internet to look up and specific to the areas you're traveling to. Even the laws. I don't spend a lot of time on laws because I don't plan on breaking laws. But sometimes when it's controversial or would be viewed controversially here, it's good to know the background and educate our team on that. I think so often you'll see it in your team of, it's exciting. I'm going to go do something new. I'm going to experience something new, someplace new, some new people. Number two is what I advise you to watch out for in your team that can do damage. And I've seen after that initial, hey, this is cool, wears off, I think there's a story there. Yeah, you laugh.
Start talking about, I'm learning that we need to start talking about culture clashes before we even get to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have a strong woman like Marsha next to you, there's a culture clash that happens that has usually popped up after the sunshine is worn off in the middle trip, and you realize, no, that's an issue like we could talk about on American soil before we even leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are things, and I.
Because we have the ability to expose ourselves to all aspects of culture. It's not okay for you to first approach African Americans going to Africa and or the behaviors and attitudes of what comes about them. So you've got, to your point, you got to do your homework. You've got to get yourself exposed so it doesn't become such a shock. So it doesn't become such a, oh, do they do like that? Or, Okay, so I think that's crucial.
Well, and I laugh because you know, no matter how much you prep, if you go into a different environment, in a different setting, there's going to be things that shock you. Yeah. I mean, there just are. But taking care of what you can before helps. I'll be honest with you. I find myself fighting this about Wednesday or Thursday after we arrive. Now, I'm not sure if it's culture or if it's just being a team leader, and I'm like, yep, I'm cranky today. I'm cranky. And my wife's just sitting back there grinning. He's like, yes, he is. But being aware. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where I said, yeah, it's Thursday, isn't it? She's like, yep. That's my cycle. And I don't know if it's necessarily related to this, but you're going to find that possibly about yourself. The things that maybe weren't a big deal start getting a little big, start to get a little irritated. How many of you have been on teams and then you see everybody's smiling and excited when they leave? Come Thursday, there's a couple people that just need to be at different ends of the building when they paint.
And they say they'll never go with them again.
Well, they might be husband and wife. You know, the first night the bad droppings in the hotel weren't a big deal. By Thursday, it's his fault. I don't know why it's his fault, but it is. Yeah. Yeah. Wendy knows what I'm talking about. But we're gonna guide our folks through it anyhow, and take our time to research. Some other things that I always recommend, just as, I don't know if it's necessarily cultural sensitivity, but just kind of hopefully common sense and respect. Asking people for permission to take, because we're in a different environment, because they live differently, maybe it's a more humble, they're not a display for something back home to take home and say, look at these poor people. You know, respect. And your host a lot of times can give you guidelines on this, on what's right. But think about it. Again, doing some background, religion fags, expect differences in sanitation. That was one of our first shockers. We'd been out of the country. We'd never been to a country where you didn't flush the toilet tissue. I hadn't. I was like, and our hosts informed us, and it was all good, but just even basic things are different. Radically. Well, that was pretty radical to me. In today's world, some of these religious interactions sometimes bring some fear, and try to find out with your host. Sometimes unexpected things come up. I again was sharing with someone when I went to Sierra Leone. I was told they wanted me to speak. And I got up, and the clerics from the mosque were there. And I was like, God, let me choose my words correctly, that I'm a witness of faith, but I'm not starting an international incident, because I had these preconceived notions of tension between Islam and Christianity that I'm not saying that it isn't some places, but they had a great relationship in that community. And I was terrified over nothing. I didn't know it. And they all laughed at me afterwards, but I had no idea. Some of these things you're just gonna be thrown into. I always try to also look in my team when I start to see the little comments that come out. I encourage you to develop your own way of addressing those. Sometimes I'm gentle, sometimes I'm not, but I try to be gentle, to let people know they may not see these comments as hurtful or a big deal, but they can be. And they can be bigger than we know, since we only see this much of the iceberg. How many of you had to sing when you go? Yeah, okay. Be prepared, team leader, have something ready. Make a joyful noise if you can't sing.
I'm so glad that they have our United Methodist hymnal. We get to practice.
There you go. I don't know why, but it does seem like just about every place I've gone as a team, if we worship with them, you all sing a song? Like, I defer to the boss. She's the musical one, but if you have something and you know ahead of time, it's nice to be able to pull it out and be a part of their worship.
This little light of mine is a good one.
There you go.
We found, at least in India, they loved it.
What are the other, anybody run into any differences here? You ever experienced that whole culture, the culture difference of personal space? That can get real uncomfortable. Right, dear? What about time?
Oh, just forget it. African time.
Is it relaxed there?
Oh, is it ever? Oh,
I'm becoming convinced that the only place that lives by the clock is the United States, maybe Canada. Yeah. And you can ask my wife, drove me absolutely bonkers the first years. What time's church start? 9? Okay.
What time's it open?
I'm there at 10 minutes to 9. There's nobody here. Are you sure what time's church? 9. You know, and 9:15 somebody walks in. 9:20 they start singing the song. They're still singing that song at 9:30. More people are. Oh, it was hard for me. And it's going to be hard for some of your team members. It is. And so expect it. We talked a little bit about this. It can be tough, depending on where you're coming from or where they're coming from. But it's gender roles can just get very complicated. And hopefully that's something you can lean on your ministry partners if you're getting into a culture where there are big swaps. They can help you understand do's, don'ts. These things are too complicated for us all to do today, or for me to claim that I know all of those do's and don'ts. How about dress? I personally advise my teams. I do have hard, you know, if somebody showed up with that shirt, I would.
I mean, it's a
would
good example.
but as a general rule for myself, if we're doing construction, it's, you know, jeans or shorts, like above the knee, ultra conservative. I get t-shirts that are just plain colors, so that I'm not worried about, am I endorsing cigarettes or beer, or does that race car have a sponsor? I just have too many other things to worry about. And you go to Goodwill or you go to Walmart or wherever, you can get a plain t-shirt real cheap. And I always coach our ladies to go above and beyond conservative, not a judgment of how they dress, just to try and eliminate any chance that someone would take offense. Usually we're more conservatively dressed than our hosts. And I'm good with that. Because again, hopefully it's one less thing that I have to worry about.
One good thing of advice that Rev gave us when we went was just go Goodwill or somewhere and buy scrubs. That way you have plenty of pockets, you know, in case you need to carry anything with you. And when you're done, just leave them there. They can use them probably.
Yep. I've left many sets of clothes in other countries.
We come back with what we have on our backs. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, unless we got something made there. But other than that,
I came back with no shoes.
Borrowed my sister's extra pair of shoes.
oh, okay.
Some of the other things that you should do some do some research on or ask before you do. Hopefully you know what language you're going to be speaking, but gifts is a big one, and we talked a bit about that. But what is appropriate? What isn't appropriate? What is there an expectation? Are things like you giving a gift building an expectation on your host that you don't want to create? Some things like that. The photographs, greeting, departing, pretty straightforward as far as research, not necessarily an implementation. But it's worthwhile to know and find out. I am, and we talked a little bit about it, I am a believer in setting some time aside to experience where you're at. Learn. Hopefully, if you sometimes you have the opportunity to do that with local folks. I love it if you can, but sometimes it's just, you can't take the whole village on the drive to the game preserve.
What's nice about the group we go with CTL, they plan a date for you, and their staff takes you on a trip to wherever they have they're getting a break day in there for you.
And it's good, and it's good team building, it's good stress relief, it's good to understand something of where you're at, even if it's just how well a lion hides, and I don't want to walk through tall grass in Africa ever again. They had us there for 25 minutes saying the lion is right there, and 20 feet away. I could not see it. Like, I'm not walking through the grass. Other ideas. We talked, I think it was Mary and I talked at the break. Team shirts. I'm a big one. I like team shirts for a number of reasons. One, I like the reminder to my team of the experience. That's not the biggest one. There are two other big ones for me. One, if I'm traveling, I do sound like I'm mean. I make them wear the shirt when we travel. I can count them easier if I get the right color. I know what top everybody's in. If I have to pick somebody out in an airport and they're all lime green shirts, there aren't many lime green shirts going around. So I like that for that standpoint, and it has gotten me through things in the past. I will say that the day, right now, I choose very carefully what emblems I put on the shirts, because of the environment we have in the world today and targeting groups. When I did India, I had a crest that said VIM, Susquehanna Conference. We all knew what it was. Yeah, that's true. But India, I put the Taj Mahal in the middle. In Kenya, I put a zebra head in the middle. It's not that I'm not ashamed, but I don't want to paint a target either. And the shirts also open up so many opportunities to talk about mission. Because people say, you're all in the same shirt. You group? Where are you going? What are you doing? And it gives us, we've had so many conversations over the years with folks planting the seed of, people really do go help other people as expressions of faith. That's been great. And like I said, it has gotten me through customs once or twice. So I'm a believer in shirts. Cheap, I don't get any commission, but I've been using lately cheaptees.com. I've been getting polos for like $5, and then I get them embroidered locally. That's just me. Another thing that I do, especially with my foreign teams, I do luggage tags. Usually they match the shirt. My wife taught me it's all about coordination and accessorizing. Yeah, it's proof that some battles aren't worth fighting. No, I do them. You can get the self-laminating kits if you want to do them that way. It's relatively inexpensive, but again, it helps your team. A lot of times in the airport, I designate bag pullers, and the rest of the team is like surrounds the bags that you're gathering to keep them from wandering off. Certainly not a requirement, but it works, and if everybody has the same luggage tag, people know to pull that.
Bag pullers? Everyone doesn't take their own bag then?
Now, as far as getting them off the carousel,
Oh, okay.
I'll get like two.
Pulling them just from the carousel, not through the airport?
No.
The rest guard them while they're getting pulled off, and then the 2 or 3 people.
Hand them back to the bag security, because unfortunately we found out, or one of our team members found out, stuff can disappear real quick. Speaking of which, I'm glad I thought of that, because I didn't remind you, during your team orientation, get a copy of the inside of everyone's passport. At least one copy. it does make a difference. We had a gentleman have his stolen in Costa Rica, and with having that, we went to the embassy, and it was like 2 hours. He had a new passport, and a couple $100, but it makes a difference. So please do that if you're traveling. I have one last encouraging video, I hope. But before that, what questions might you have or comments? I just want out of here. That's my comment.
She's just digging.
What is it?
You guys were saying that when we were talking about you need to settle things here on the American ground before you get.
Well, I mean, to the point that you made, if I could do it figuratively, to the point that you made, you go and you travel with people you don't know. So you don't know what ticks me off or what ticks me off, or what plucks my nerve or whatever have you. So I think that we experienced several of those experiences. Some people aren't morning people. Don't talk to me if I didn't have my coffee. Like we have to learn these twerks about each other. So it does create an opportunity for us to either get closer together or further apart. Outside of my dad, I would probably have fallen into being the next oldest person on the team. I'm 53. I'm going out with these individuals who are 30-something. I've got kids their age, and we're supposed to be equals here. But yet sometimes the mother in me, whether it be in attitude or tone, I am African American. I speak, or expression. I'm African American. We speak out. I don't think it, I speak it. So learning those twerks about each other when you're on a mission team can have its advantages and disadvantages. But when God shows up, which is what I am so grateful that always ends up happening, it either can strengthen the relationship, or you want to work on this because it's not about us, it's about God. And when he allows that to happen, Drew and I will never go to Africa without one another. Okay? So it's just really being conscious of what your twerks are. You know that that's a peeve for you. And I do have a peeve. Language, speaking in tone, respectful to one another, what you do at home, don't bring it here. You're really changing who you are, and me getting comfortable with, I correct people's language. It's a natural thing. I taught in classrooms. So it comes natural, but I have to realize you're grown. You can say what you want to say. I need to figure out how to be okay with that. And I ain't. So I say take it as a teaching moment. So that's how that happens.
Sounds like somebody may have had a streak like I have. I don't need you to tell me what to do. Thank you.
And it's going to happen. Personalities.
Yeah.
Personalities. And you may learn things about couples in your church you never wanted to know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially if the walls are thin in your accommodations.
Whoa.
No. Oh, you went to a totally different place than when I was going. I was talking about arguments.
We haven't gone with couples. We haven't gone with couples.
It can be very interesting.
From his expression, I think there's a new rule I need to add in.
I was talking arguments. Actually, let me pass this. I have another pass around here before I forget. If you would like, I'm hopeful that the list will still be used. I've been, over the years, compiling a list of folks who have mission interest that I send directly when new mission teams come out, new opportunities come out, so that I'm not dependent on pastors putting one more thing on their list they have to talk about on Sunday morning or getting in the church bulletin. If you'd like to be on that list, please sign up. I would actually ask you to sign anyhow because I do want to keep a list of who's been trained. The other thing, there's a little checkbox. If you would like to receive my spreadsheets that I use for building budgets and for team rosters, put a check on that, and I will email that to you as well.
Just let me give it back to you.
No, you have to fill it out before you leave. You learn my rule. You learn one of my rules.
Not letting us out of here.
Okay, I want to share this one last video that I find cool. Hope you do.
Our world is in need. People are dying. Children are suffering. The oceans rise and the earthquakes spreading destruction throughout the land. Hope is needed. We have the eternal hope that is the answer. The Lord has blessed us with the knowledge of His higher power. We know who created us. We know who died for us. We know who saved us. And we must not keep it a secret. We must stand on the mountaintops and shout it out. Jesus Christ loves me. Jesus Christ loves you. So we speak to the nations. We share with them this message through action. Where sickness spreads, we will bring healing. Where children are persecuted, we will bring protection. Where disaster strikes, we will bring aid. Where poverty thrives, we will bring help. We preach the gospel whether the law allows it or not. We must do these things because we have the hope that is needed. From Nepal to the Philippines, to China, to Sri Lanka, to Haiti, to Africa, we will be the face of love in action. We will make Jesus famous in all the land, and we will change the world for His glory.
That's my wish for you and me. Thank you for your time today.